subscribe to this idea that everything in life can be lumped into one of three buckets: health, wealth, or relationships. And anything that doesn't fit in those buckets, I find it's not really important. This podcast, we focus mostly on health, and the reason I've always done that is because it's the easiest, I think, of the three. You can start eating healthy, go to the gym, do a yoga class, and feel better tomorrow, but try to sort out your relationships or your finances within 24 hours with a positive impact. That's a tough thing. I mean, you can certainly make baby steps, but I just find it to be a much, much more difficult nut to crack. But it's something that's worthy. We have had a bunch of people recently on the show talking about relationships, and they've been really positively received. So I'm doing more. And of course, this is something that I'm always obsessed with and I was trying to improve in my life as well. If you're new here, it's the Lucas Rockwood Show. I'm your host. I am a yoga teacher, a trainer, a nutritional coach. I'm a father. First and foremost, I'm a student, and I do this show so I can learn stuff. I go out and find interesting people, medical doctors, psychologists, yoga teachers, and I try to bring their best research, their best thinking, their best current thinking to you here to hopefully help you live a more fulfilled life. And of course, I want to live one of those lives too. On this week's show, we'll be talking with a psychologist who focuses on helping women to find their dream man. But whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're single or in a relationship, I think this discussion will reveal some things that will at least help you to think through what you're doing a little bit more consciously. As always, your thoughts, comments, and feedback are most welcome. You can send me a voicemail. Go to yogabody.com/asklucas. Otherwise, direct message me on Instagram. If you follow me, I'm at Lucas Rockwood. Just send me a question right there, and then I'll be sure to get it, and I will answer it on the show. Thanks so much for listening. Please share the show with a friend and enjoy. So hello and welcome everyone. Today's show is called Better Your Relationship, and I'm joined here with Maya Diamond. Maya's a dating and relationship coach. She's also a yoga teacher and a massage therapist. She has a great TEDx talk you can find online. We'll link up in the show notes as well. She has a master's in somatic psychology. You can learn more about her work at empowerlove.us, empowerlove.us. And again, we'll link up in the show notes as well. Maya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So wonderful to be here.
So this is an unusual path to end up in. How did you end up, focusing your career on relationships? And from what I understand, you're mostly working with females right now, right?
Yes, that is my main focus. I would say number one is it's just a huge passion. So I just love relationships. I love talking about relationships, intimacy, sexuality, dating. And so I'm really excited about that. And then also, it's an area that I've had struggles with. And so through my own personal challenges, both in terms of my family history as well as my own personal struggles, I've learned so much. And I love to get to use that knowledge and wisdom from my own pain and healing in the service of other people's growth and healing.
And why do you choose just to work with women? Is it because you feel like you can relate to them more? Do you feel like women are more challenged, or how did you end up there?
Yes, I think that I have a certain gravity towards women growing up with my mom and my sister and, just being very, very close with women my whole life. And then also feeling, just really passionate about helping women feel met in relationship, because I think I watched my mom feeling unmet a lot during my childhood, and the pain of that, the successful woman who, felt super fulfilled in her career, but not in her relationship. So
when you say being met, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I would say we want every person that I talk to, every client that I have, they want to be met emotionally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, in terms of their careers. And so when we feel met, we feel seen, we feel heard, we feel loved, but we also feel like this person is our match and can meet us on all these levels where we are. And I think most men and most women want to be met by their partner. And when they feel unmet, when their needs are not met, then they feel this sense of frustration or longing or upset around that.
Is it realistic for someone to try to get met on on many levels? I mean, on all levels? I mean, can somebody be your intellectual match, your sexual partner, your friend, share the same intellectual interest? That seems like a lot to ask from one person.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that nobody is perfect, and I think that's one of the key things that is very important to understand, which is no partner that you have will not have weaknesses and will not have imperfections. And so I say, it has to be like a great enough match or a good enough match. And so, yes, I think you can be met on all the levels, and nobody is going to be perfect or have, not have insecurities or not have, places where they need to grow. So it's kind of that balance.
I guess where I'm going with this is most people that I meet in relationship have at least one major thing that's very important to them that they can't share with their partner. Maybe they're super into snowboarding, or maybe they're really into literature, or maybe they're super interested in working out and their partner doesn't do it. How do they understand those are deal breakers? Okay.
I think that's fantastic. I think that feeds the relationship when you have different interests. I think you have to have enough similar interests and then enough different interests. And like having your own thing that like really excites you, you're going to bring that energy back into the relationship. So that's great.
I guess I differentiate between interests and values. Like I don't mind somebody, when somebody has different interests, that's fine, whatever people are into. But if they're different values, that's where I kind of, that feels like that's a problem. Do you differentiate between those two as well?
Yes. I would say there's lifestyle, interest, and values. Your lifestyle is kind of your day-to-day, how you want to live your life. What are the things that you want to, do in your day-to-day? Your interests are your passions, and then your values are your, your philosophies and what you really hold dear, what's really important to you. And values, that is so, so important. When we have different values than our partner, it's much harder to have that long-lasting relationship.
I find it really difficult to get clear on what values people have, and I find it difficult to find my own values. I grew up with religion, and I don't have it anymore, and it just stopped working for me when I was about 17 or something. But the one thing that's really great about religion is it gives you like shared values that you can chat about. And I with my partner, I don't really have that. What do we talk about? I mean, honesty, that's important. Trust. I mean, it just sounds like corporate speak for it sounds like corporate language that, Procter & Gamble puts on the wall of their office or something. How do you help people think about what they really value?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I would disagree. I would say that honesty and trust are not corporate value. I mean, they could be corporate values. I would say that they're just, and, I come from a background in psychology, my master's in psychology. And so, honesty and trust is a foundation of not only a romantic relationship, but also, the primary relationships that we grow up in childhood with our mother and father. If we don't feel that honesty and trust and love and respect, then it's going to really, it's going to actually create a lot of challenges, both in terms of our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others. And so honesty, trust, love, compassion, but also a value could be travel, right? I mean, that's a huge value of mine, is travel and adventure. So it's like, all these things are really, not that, well, first of all, I would say honesty, trust, and love are something in our society that isn't always there in relationships. Yeah. And so it's such a huge thing to have that in your relationship. And a lot of the women that I work with, they've come from backgrounds where that has not been the case, where there's been abuse, where there's been affairs, where there's been, a lack of presence and a lack of connection and a lack of attunement. So, which to me is love, those things, presence, connection, and attunement.
Interesting. I heard you speak about emotional responsiveness. Can you share with listeners what that is?
Yes. That is when someone has a feeling or a need and you're able to respond respond to that feeling or need in a, loving and connected way. So say you were having a hard time, maybe you're stressed out at work. And, if I was an emotionally responsive partner, I would be like, being present with you in an emotional way. Like, wow, that sounds really hard. Tell me more about that. What does that feel like? Oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Like, what can I do for you? So it could look like that, or it could also look like you saying, this is what I really need right now. And then your partner being able to be emotionally responsive and give it to you. And not to say that we always can give our partners what they need all the time. That's important to say, which is sometimes we have personal boundaries, and B, we have all these different commitments and responsibilities. And so I think the key is just being with someone who has that desire to be responsive to you as much as they can.
And so you shared some ideas of, when that goes well, what does that look like when it goes badly?
I would say when it goes badly, it looks like maybe someone sharing an emotional truth. Like, wow, I just felt really hurt when you said that. And the other person not responding, like shutting down, walking away, not saying anything, or invalidating the person's emotional truth. That happens a lot, I think, is an invalidation when, because the thing that's really interesting, in my opinion, about our society, in Western society, is that we have literally been taught that emotions are not valuable from a very, very young age. And it's been in the philosophy, I talk about in the TEDx and Descartes, I am what I think, this is who I am, is my thoughts. And so the truth is, we're our sensations, we're our feelings, we're our thoughts, we're our spirits, we have all of it. And so when we invalidate the feeling world, we are also invalidating the self. And so a lot of people grew up with parents, because that was kind of the old paradigm, that we're not so loving towards the feeling world. And so I think then we as adults can recapitulate that. And so when we're able to be just as understanding towards feelings as we are towards thoughts, then it can be really powerful and have real emotional intimacy.
Yeah. And between men and women, obviously there's if we were to do broad strokes, there's probably different perspectives in terms of what they value, and what you've just shared is kind of stereotypical in a woman's response to what she's looking for in a relationship. And on the flip side, what is the kind of male default response, if we were to generalize?
Of what a man is looking for in a relationship?
This emotional responsiveness probably wouldn't be on top of his list. Maybe it should be, but I'm not sure he'd be able to verbalize it this way or articulate it this way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think what's on the top of a man's list is maybe, definitely connection. Yeah. I would say fun, connection, intimacy, physical, and they would probably say, fun, connection, physical intimacy, adventure, sharing your life together, having that companionship and that love. Yeah. And I think a lot of men do want this, but I agree that it's not necessarily all men that can articulate it like this.
Yeah. So people right now have mega access to dating like never before. It's just like a crazy world. I've never really, I've been in relationships since I was like 17 years old or something. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with this, but it's bonkers. I mean, people can get a date in 10 minutes and yet people are super lonely, can't meet anybody. 5 people are flaking, they're ghosting. They have all these weird rules, like, they message you and then you wait 3 days and you tell them you're busy, and then people go to these conferences. I mean, it's I don't pretend to be any good at relationships at all, but I know that is not healthy. So how do people think about this and even start to navigate this? It's like Bumble this, Tinder that, I don't know. They have one here called Adopta un Tío. It's like adopt a guy where only women pick guys. Just like super weird, just super strange. I mean, on the one hand, it's great, right? Because, in the very rare occasions when I've been single, which is a cumulative 6 months of my entire adult life, you meet somebody and you're not sure if they're even interested, you're not sure if they're even available aside from interested. And so it's just like so awkward. So on the one hand, at least people can find other people who are available and looking. That's positive.
Yeah.
At the same time,
that's a big positive of this dating world that we're in.
Cyberspace, bonkers, text communicate. I mean, really, really, it's doing people's heads in. I mean, people are deleting apps, logging in again, like deleting it, logging in again. How do you help people to navigate this crazy territory?
I think, getting guidance is definitely highly, highly recommended. And getting clarity on what you truly want in a partner. So when you're clear, it's a lot easier to discern well as getting accountability. So I think when you've had patterns in love that haven't, where your relationships haven't worked out, then there's a good chance that you may need some accountability in terms of like doing what you say you're going to do in terms of relationships. Because a lot of people say they want something, but then they find someone who doesn't have that thing. And then they, again, kind of disrespect their own needs and values. So I think having accountability is huge. Having clarity around what it is, like everyone gets clarity around what they want in terms of a job and a career. So do the same thing with relationship, and that's going to have you go really far. And then the other third key is sticking to it. So a lot of people start dating and then they just stop, and then they start and then they stop. And what happens when you do that, you lose momentum, and you also are kind of telling the universe a lot of different things. Like, yes, I want this. No, I don't. Yes, I want this. It's like foot on the gas, foot on the brakes, foot on the gas, foot on the brakes. And so a lot of my clients, when they start working with me, that's what they've done in the past, and it hasn't worked. And so one of the things that really helps them is to have that accountability with staying with the course. Because again, you didn't get into your career in just like a minute. Maybe it took some time. Maybe you spent some time, money, and education to get there. And so giving that same level of investment in your love life can just reap so many rewards. It's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate the parallel to career. I always I always compare, work relationships and personal relationships, just without the romance. But, there's a lot of similarities. But I guess the challenge with work is I just think of my career, and in order to get to good, I've had to go through a lot of bad, wrong job, wrong product, wrong staff, wrong team, and really a lot of pain. And it just seems like I've done that in my relationships too. It just seems like you kind of have to be willing to go through that work. And maybe that's where a lot of people just aren't really willing to realize, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do this for now and see what happens 6 months from now, and then try to get something better. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think, again, our society teaches us that career success and ambition and making money is more important than relationships. And so I think people think we're taught in Hollywood that, you just meet the person and then it all works out, and you just meet the person magically, right? And so we don't have this paradigm in our society that you actually have to do work on yourself, work in relationship, and that, that it takes a certain level of, insight and healing, in my opinion, and vision to get where you want to go in your relationship life. And so I think what I see a lot is people really giving up. A lot of women saying, wow, there's just no good guys out there. I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to never date again. And it's really, really sad to me because, the truth is that there's lots and lots of amazing people in the world. And, that when you put yourself out there, you get results. And so it's a little bit scary to put yourself out there, especially exactly online, because there's going to be rejection. There's going to be ghosting. There's going to be, disappointing dates. And so that's why, having a coach, having a guide, to keep holding the candle for you is really powerful, and helping you navigate that world, and also helping you feel strong, because it can be hard on the ego, but so can relationship. It's like, that's just a part of life. People are not going to be validating you all the time. And so I think it's, there's a level of resiliency that's really, that I teach my clients to have. And when you have that, it's quite powerful. It's like amazing, kind of unstoppable.
So I'm 41, and a bunch of people on my team here are like in their early 20s, and I hire people off in their 20s. And the resumes that I see these days are weird. People work for a place for 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. I mean, really, really common. People are 24 and they've had eight jobs. And these are intelligent, articulate, educated people I respect. And they're making weird choices. And then I see people doing similar things with their personal life. It's just like a lot of dabbling. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. It's wrong for me. I know that. But I just, I really just am curious about, I find that people really lack clarity in terms of what they want to do with their career, and they have really high expectations, at least based on my middle-aged man perspective. And people really lack clarity in terms of what they look for in their relationships. And I see these memes online where people will repost, I'm not looking for a date. I'm looking for a warrior who opens my door, who pays my bills, who does the laundry and answers the kids in the night. And I'm just like, that's great, fairy tale thing. But like, I guess the thing that I always think of with those memes is like, it's interesting what you'd like to receive. What do you have to offer?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the same thing with these people bouncing these jobs all the time. That's great that you're looking for a dream job that values your purple hair and your interest in blogging on the weekends, and that's all cool. But like, what are you actually showing up with, aside from like a quirky personality, which is charming, but like, what does that have anything to do with like what we're talking about today? And I find this kind of bizarre entitled idea that because you're dating, you deserve a warrior, or because you're in the job market, you deserve like a dream job. The like bring something to the table part of it, I feel like is often missed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's huge, is to get clarity around what you are available and have to offer, and what you're giving to a relationship, and why you are a catch, and to really know that and have, esteem and worthiness around that. I would say for women, it's kind of the opposite, where there's a lot of low self-worth and low self-esteem. And so there's a lot more work to be done on actually deeply feeling. Maybe a woman might say that they believe that they deserve all that, but like internally, there's a lot of low self-worth and low self-esteem in terms of women, which is why they can go for these relationships where they're not treated well. And so I would say women need to work more on the worthiness and self-esteem and self-respect and self-trust piece, and boundaries, and discernment. And so I agree that commitment sets you free. So commitment, that piece around like going from one thing to the next, commitment is so, so powerful. And also that, when, this piece around, again, having high, I think, I do believe in having a high vision and a high expectation for yourself, but I agree it needs to come with a deep sense of like true value. So what am I bringing to the table? What relational skills do I have? Exactly how much am I able to, trust myself and trust others? That's one of the biggest relational skills that I see. How much am I able to communicate well, communicate and express myself and listen and hear other people's communication? How much am I able to have healthy boundaries and respect myself and other people's boundaries? How much am I able to regulate myself emotionally and help other people regulate themselves? Like, if you have these core skills, relationship skills, then you are bringing a lot to the table. But if you don't, then you're not actually, in my opinion.
I have a childhood friend who I saw quite a few years ago, and he had just kind of come out of a messy relationship, and I was kind of asking him what he was up to. And this is not a deep guy at all, but he said something that really stuck with me. And he said, he's like, I'm just trying to make myself a better person. And he was telling me what he's doing, and he was going to the gym, and he was trying to get a better house and trying to get a better, a more meaningful job, meaning one that meant something to him. Basically, he was trying to make himself more attractive. That's not the way he said it, but that's basically what he was doing. And I really thought, I really respect that. I think that's important. Make yourself a catch, make yourself attractive. There's a bunch of things you can't change. You can't change where you were born or who your parents were, or your crazy uncle. Yeah, how tall you are, exactly. But you can totally get in shape, and you can get a better job. You can find, you can stop drinking. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. Totally. And I think this accept me as I am thing, I always kind of push back on it. It's I want to accept the good things, and I'd like to, see if maybe we could work on some of the bumps, because I don't know. I don't want to. There's some things I don't want to accept, and
and those are your standards.
Yeah, your best friend who's toxic and is over every weekend. It's I'm just not up for that, And so it's really a challenge for me. It's really a push and pull, trying to figure out what of this is me just being a jerk, and what of this is me just having boundaries,
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think everything that you said is about boundaries. And I think that's exactly, having boundaries is healthy, and working on yourself is super healthy, because who you attract when you're single, you attract who you are. So the more, the more healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy, the more emotionally available you are, truly emotionally available, which to me means, you can be vulnerable. Again, you can express your needs, you can express your truth, all these things. It's then you're going to meet your match. And if you have high standards. And so I think that's the piece that I really help women with, is that discernment and high standards piece, because there's something in women, and I think it's partly the patriarchy, because we've literally been in a patriarchy for, a long time. And so I think because of that, women have this, and it hasn't been very long that women haven't literally been dependent on men for their survival, right? So it's there's a very old part of women that believes that our survival is dependent on being with a man. And that is in our, ancestry, in our genes, in our biology. And so I think because of that, women can sometimes lower their standards just to be with a man. Instead, it's but I think more and more what I see, and especially in the younger populations, which is so exciting, is, actually, we don't need men for our survival anymore. We can protect ourselves. We can make money. We can, have a career. We can make a lot of money. All these things that women didn't have access to, now they do, right? And so I think that actually is creating a higher standard that women are holding now. And I think it's wonderful to really hold that, and to be clear around your standards. That's all. Just have that clarity.
What do you do? So, you get, you're working mostly with women, and obviously women are doing this deep work, and they're thinking through what they have to offer and what their standards are and what kind of man they'd like. And then they meet some guy who's just swiping right on Tinder. How do they get that person is not necessarily a bad person, but they're not necessarily at the same headspace. I guess what I'm talking about is just approach to relationship. A lot of people are just swipe right and hope for the best, and they're not. There's not a whole. So you got one partner who's deeply involved in let's make this the best thing ever, and let's really sit down and chat, and the other person's just I don't know. Let's go out to dinner and see what happens. How do you reconcile that from a psychology perspective? Because this happens with couples counseling. This happens with couples all the time. One person really wants to work, and the other person thinks there's nothing going on, or is just not up for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that that's going to be a really hard relationship. So I think, when one person doesn't want to do their own personal growth work or doesn't want to work on the relationship when there's actual real things to work on, then it's going to be pretty challenging. Which brings me to, and so that's one of the things that I help my clients do is discern and see like, is this man willing to say there's work to be done in the future in the relationship? Is this man willing to do that work when that may come online? Because some men, are not willing to, capable, available for that. And then a lot of men, I would say, are and know that that's part of, relationship and part of growth and part of expanding as a human and evolving as a human. And so I think that's just like a baseline for relationships is willing to grow and willing to work on things. And it can get really boring and really stale if you're not.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess the only thing I would push back on is it could be the circles that I'm in terms of, my field of work and things like this, but I don't see any difference between the male and female struggle. The men that I meet, they're in the exact same weird place as women, meaning, you have the guy who's super into his relationship, wants to figure it out, wants to take the next step and get married, and his partner isn't sure about kids, and she's already 33. And I see it really happening both ways, but who knows? Maybe it is just my world that I'm floating in, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So this is and so this brings us to the deeper conversation, which is, I'm an expert in healing our attachment styles. And so each person has an attachment style, a predominant one that's number one. Then there's a number two I believe we have two that predominate. And so there's the 4 attachment styles, which is secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Secure people feel like there's more than enough love to go around. They trust themselves. They trust the world. If a relationship ends, they feel like there's going to be another one that comes. From everything we've talked about, you sound pretty secure. The next one is anxious, which is, people who are more preoccupied with relationships, people who fear abandonment, and people who, may have had inconsistent parenting growing up, so they didn't know when they were going to get love. So it kind of puts their nervous system a little bit on high alert. The next one is avoidant, which avoidants feel like a little overwhelmed in relationship and they need a lot of space. And so it's harder for them to commit. And they're the ones who are the more hot and cold, and they don't necessarily know what they want, because in order to commit, they would really have to, face some deeper intimacy fears. And so that's why it can be, a lot of the women I work with have had that struggle of, being with partners who are more on the avoidant spectrum. And then disorganized is basically when we've grown up with a parent or primary caregiver who was a source of love and a source of panic and fear. So it's, usually a chaotic household where there's a lot of fighting, or a household where there was a lot of abuse. And so when we have that disorganized style, it is very hard to stay consistent and reliable and loving in a relationship, because when we get close, we start feeling a lot of panic and fear. And so we have we fear abandonment, but we also feel like too much intimacy is too overwhelming. So we push the person away. And so the more that we heal the avoidant, anxious, and disorganized styles, so the people I work with are in that insecure spectrum of attachment. So the more we heal that deep wiring and those deep childhood wounds and that deep trauma from the past, the more we attract and choose and are able to be the secure partners that we want to be. And so, a lot of, exactly. And that's why it goes both ways in terms of men and women, because of what I just said, right? There's plenty of women who, are in all those attachment styles, and plenty of men who are in all those attachment styles.
Interesting. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know for a lot of people listening who are in relationship, this is making them rethink things. And for people who aren't in relationship, I'm sure they'll like to follow you, watch your talks online, and learn more about your work. Where should we send people?
That would be great. So empowerlove.us/love.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, and let's keep in touch for the future. There's a huge demand right now for yoga trapeze teachers, and a big part of that is we have like 200,000 students all around the world in something like 42 countries, and most of them don't have a local teacher. And so our certified teachers, we started certifying back in 2016, they're doing really, really well. By well, I mean they're filling up their classes, their workshops, their local events, their private and their public classes very, very quickly. Many of them teach from their home or from their clients' homes. Many of them teach in fitness centers, CrossFit boxes, and of course yoga studios as well. It's surprisingly fast and easy to get set up as a teaching professional, and we've developed a really comprehensive course. It's a fusion course, which means there's an online at-home component. We call it e-learning, and then there's an in-person course, which is with us in Barcelona at our headquarters. We have 3 professional studios here, and we have quite a setup for training teachers. I'm mentioning this because enrollment is open for our upcoming course, and we're accepting applications. If you're interested, go to yogatrapezetraining.com. You can see stories and learn about what the course is all about, and also see what types of people have been through the program in the past to see if it's right for you. yogatrapezetraining.com. Hope you can join us. This week's nutritional tip is in response to a question from listener Marcy on Instagram. Sent me a message and said, "Hey Lucas, have you heard of maca? Does it really help with libido, and does it really help with fertility? I'm interested in the first." Well, I appreciate the question, Marcy. I have heard of maca. In fact, we used to manufacture and sell it at Yoga Body. We don't anymore. It's really easy to get, so we stopped. And you can find it in most health food stores. You can find really good quality maca. Some people find it upsets their stomachs, so just start off taking a small amount, but you can work up to a couple of grams a day. Does it work? Well, if you read like the medical literature, the research literature on it, it's pretty undecided. Some research suggests that it increased sperm count, but in terms of increasing libido, these are difficult tests to measure anyway. But anecdotally, sure works for me, and anecdotally it works for lots and lots of people. So I'd encourage you to give it a try. It's really safe. It's a root vegetable, comes from Peru. It is looks sort of like a turnip, and I find it really tasty, really delicious. And I don't use it regularly, but back when we used to manufacture it, I used to use it irregularly, and it certainly lights the fire. So give it a try. We have a question this week from listener Barry. Barry says, "Lucas, what is the best stretch for tight hamstrings? I've been a runner for 12 years and my hamstrings are all locked up." I get this question a lot, which is, what is the one best stretch? And I always avoid it because it kind of depends on the person, and there's never usually one thing unless you're reading online listicles where it's top 10 reasons why you should go to Costa Rica or whatever it is. In terms of the best hamstring stretch, if I had to pick one, I guess, Barry, I would just say ragdoll. Take your feet as wide as your hips, bend your knees, fold forward, standing position, hang out there for 2 to 5 minutes. I usually hold for 5. It's a good pose. Is it the only pose I do for your hamstrings? No, the asymmetrical stuff is valuable as well. While you're asking the question, let me just differentiate because this will be helpful for everyone listening. You have 2 types of stretches on your hamstrings. You could do them symmetrically. There's a lot more than 2, but 2 general categories. Symmetrical poses, so sit on the floor, fold forward, stand with your feet hips width and fold forward. That would be symmetrical. And then asymmetrical, you generally do these for your hamstrings seated down. So sit down, bend your right leg in at 90 degrees and stretch out over your left leg, and then switch left leg in, right leg out. The asymmetrical stretches are really helpful for imbalances. Imbalances, what I'm referring to is muscle imbalances, where your dominant side tends to be tighter and stronger than the other side. So I'm right-handed. My right shoulder, my right hamstring, my right hip, they're all stronger and tighter than my left side. And the asymmetrical stuff does a better job of balancing out imbalances. You'll never get to balance, but it certainly helps. So Barry, I might recommend just doing a ragdoll pose. Step your feet as wide as your hips, fold forward, hold for 2 to 5 minutes, but you might also add in a couple of passive gravity yoga style asymmetrical stretches on the ground as well. Hamstrings can be really frustrating. The good news is they're much, much easier to open up than your hips or your spine. Hamstrings are relatively easy to target and they respond pretty well to stretching, and there's not as much complexity as there is when you're dealing with a joint like the hips or the series of joints that is your spine. Hope that's helpful, Barry.
This week's iTunes review is by Tomato Saucy aka Amanda. Tomato Saucy aka Amanda says, "I've been listening for a few months and have found the topics often seem to coincide with what I'm dealing with in my own life. After listening to episode 326, the food, vitamins and blood test episode, I decided I needed to get a blood test and explore my results. It turns out that I was very low in vitamin B12. I started weekly injections and have now moved to monthly. I'm really lucky we caught it, as I've learned this vitamin deficiency can be quite serious, so thank you. I also enjoy your perspective as an expat, as I am one myself. I look forward to listening more in the future. Congratulations, Tomato Saucy aka Amanda, you have won a yoga trapeze. Email us at podcast@yogabody.com and we'll ship it to you.
If you're a regular Yoga Talk Show listener, you'll definitely want to get on my email list. Go to yogabody.com/sign me up. When you enter your email address there, we always have free giveaways every month, yoga straps, water bottles, discounts in our shop, and all kinds of other things. When you sign up at yogabody.com/sign me up, I'll send you just one email a week with updates about the show, special offers, new courses, and valuable information that I think you'll find useful. So go to yogabody.com/sign me up to claim your free prize now.